Hey friends, it's your boy. Today I want to talk about something that is very near and dear to my heart, which is bridging the gap between, for lack of a better word, normies and activist circles. So, really quick, brief rundown of my childhood. I was bullied as a kid a lot for being neurodivergent, gender nonconforming, etc., etc. And a lot of the internalized hatred that I had for being bisexual, for being trans, without necessarily realizing it, was turned outward. And I was embraced by toxic communities. So, growing up with a father who has gotten significantly better, but back then was very homophobic, very transphobic, and very racist. I grew up with these ideas in my head, and they were constantly reinforced by the kind of media that I ended up listening to, whether that was on YouTube, on TV. I mean, I watched Fox News every night. I listened to Rush Limbaugh. You know, that's the position that I was in. Now, my core values have always been the same. Being kind to other people, standing up for those who can't stand up for themselves, being open-minded, having a skeptical but open-minded view of the world is very important to me. And in general, those values have remained the same, but back then I didn't really put those values, to the right places. So I would often get really frustrated when people would discuss civil rights because I was under the impression that America was already perfect. I bought into the lie, hook, line, and sinker, that America was the greatest nation in the world and could do no wrong. And that's a lie that a lot of us buy into. It took active work on myself to get myself out of that programming and to start seeing activists for who they are, which is not radical, crazy, bra-burning, city-destroying demons, but regular people who are fighting for some really good causes to undo systems of oppression that have been present in this country in particular for hundreds of years. But the first step to actually analyzing my own thoughts about this was people who came to me and talked about their experiences with these things and let me ask the stupid questions and called me out when I was being bigoted. These are people who I still consider very close friends of mine, who spoke to me about their experiences, and because I fundamentally have a very, very high level of empathy, which is not always a good thing, as anyone would tell you. I feel others' emotions very easily, and sometimes that can lead me into positions where I can be easily manipulated, basically. But because I have a very high level of empathy, I was able to put myself in their shoes and start picturing what it would be like if I was in their place. And even connecting bits of my own life with their life. Being bullied is not something that's unique to people who look or act or sound or believe like I do. Bullying is, it happens to a lot of different people across all walks of life, across the world. So these experiences are not unique, and we can use this kind of outcast experience to pull people in the right direction. Because that's also what people like white supremacists use to groom young white men, and in some cases women, to their side. They use the narrative of you have been oppressed to draw people in based on a fundamental misunderstanding of oppression dynamics and a misunderstanding of why people struggle. You can ask any impoverished white person if they have had struggles with money, if they've gone through hardship, and absolutely they've gone through hardship. That doesn't change just based on their race. But what does change is the dynamics associated with them being white. Now, I don't think that the community has done a very good job of disseminating important information in ways that are understandable by common folks. Because things like privilege, oppression, I mean, these are pretty loaded words, but they have, they have use in academic contexts. And they mean something. They mean a lot of things, actually. And there are whole methods of study that are dedicated to untangling these dynamics. But to the average person, saying something like white privilege would seem ridiculous to a white person who has struggled with their finances. They don't understand, and this is partly the fault of just the telephone game that is spreading information. They don't understand the true dynamics behind this and what it means to have privilege. So educating them on these kinds of things is extremely important. But a lot of us come across as extremely preachy when we talk about this kind of stuff, apropos of nothing. And a lot of times we get into these conversations with people who don't necessarily want to be involved in the conversation. Sometimes that's necessary when calling people out. If someone does something bigoted, I don't care if they want to be involved in the conversation or not, because, honey, they're going to be involved in the conversation. But if they are living their own lives, but maybe don't understand these dynamics and are saying things that are just based in misinformation, and we can correct that, then we can engage with them. But I also want to have a space where people who are legitimately seeking information can come and find that information from people who have experienced it ourselves. Whether that's questions about, anti-Black racism in America, or whether that's questions about the experiences of trans people. I want people to be able to listen to level heads, and this is not playing into respectability politics, I'll go into this in a minute, who can inform them of their own biases and talk from personal experience, especially people like me who weren't born into liberal households. I was born into a household with a man who, I'm not going to go into the kinds of things he said in the past because I'm not going to assume that he still believes them. But the ideas that I got were so harmful and so toxic. I want people who were brought up like me to recognize that not everyone who believes like me was born into some wonderful utopia of leftist critical thought. That's just not how most of us are raised. And if we sort of get to the bottom of that, I think that is incredibly important. So that's my idea. I might do a follow-up video about what I was about to go into because I don't want this one to be too long. So take what you will from that. I think my queso is almost here. So be good to each other and have a good one.